Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of God of War Sons of Sparta. I play it on the PS5 because it's a PS5 exclusive. Let's get into the story. You play as a young Kratos and Deimos exploring the Spartan countryside. They're specifically cadets at this time, and while they're visiting Sparta, they find out that another fellow cadet of theirs named Vasily, he is missing. Well, Kratos doesn't really seem to care in, traditional Kratos fashion. Deimos does, and he basically drags Kratos along. Now, there is more that happens throughout. You meet some interesting characters along the way. And while that's what you're playing, this is actually a story being told to Calliope by Kratos. A somewhat younger Kratos, a pre-Blades of Chaos Kratos. I actually enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the twists and turns along the way, and I liked a lot of the characters as well as, Kratos and Deimos. Even though there were times where I was like, I don't know how Kratos this feels. There were moments like that, and then there were other moments where you're like, oh, that's very Kratos. But overall, I'd say I enjoyed the story. Now let's move on to the audio, and when it comes to the music, it's kind of a mixed bag for me. They have some really good music, some music that really feels classic God of War, but then at times it gets really chiptune and it feels very weird, and sometimes they're blended together. Sometimes the true God of War music moves to the back and the chiptune moves up, and vice versa. So that was a bit off-putting for me. Not that I hate chiptune, it was just a weird blend that I couldn't quite get all the time. But let's move on to the voiceover work, and I think the voiceover work is very well done, whether it's young Kratos or young Kratos telling the story to Calliope. I think the other characters are all very well done. All of them do a good job bringing their characters to life and fitting into this world and this idea. And then you've got the sound effects, which overall I think were very good, though there were times where I had some strange glitching with sound effects. There might be some that are missing, or in some areas I had like this repeating loop of certain sound effects that just shouldn't have been happening, and it was kind of weird and frustrating. Once I went on to the next zone, it stopped, but while I was in that zone, it was weird. Now let's get on to the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a side-scrolling Metroidvania style game. But it can be played single player or co-op. If you play single player, you run around as Kratos, Deimos pops up every now and then. If you're playing co-op, you can play together. Second player is Deimos, the younger brother. It does actually work like a pretty traditional God of War in some ways. You fight enemies, you gain souls, you use souls to level up. What is different is there are multiple things to level up. It's not just your abilities, which personally I found most of the abilities to be kind of useless. There were a couple of defensive ones that I started using, but a lot of the offensive ones I just didn't find practical. There are all sorts of items you find throughout the world that will level you up or, increase your gear in some way. Kratos has a spear and a shield, which is pretty traditional for Spartans. You can upgrade 3 different parts of the spear: the head, the shaft, and the tail. You can also swap them out for different heads, shafts, and tails that do different things, and then you can upgrade those as well. You can also swap out the rim of your shield and upgrade that. You get a belt that you can upgrade. And then you get God's blessings. A sling from Apollo, a sword from Artemis, etc. And you can upgrade those as well by finding boons in trees and at statues and so on and so forth. And those are actually, really key to the game because it's a Metroidvania game. So there is a lot of backtracking and exploring, and you gain new abilities and can explore new areas. You can unlock new secret things. The game is somewhat generous in that it will automatically mark certain things that you're looking for. You can mark up your map yourself, and it will give you kind of a guide point, not necessarily something that guides you directly there, but it'll show where you need to go generally, and you can explore your way there. You'll fight a crap ton of enemies, as well as you'll fight some bosses. The bosses were pretty cool. I think they had some awesome designs, but I don't think any of the fights were super memorable. They're not going to stand out to me way later. Honestly, the exploration stands out to me more than the combat did. Oh, and I almost forgot that there's a game mode that is a roguelike game mode, and that's actually a lot of fun. I've enjoyed them doing that in the past, and I enjoyed it here. I didn't play this co-op, I will say that. I played single player and I enjoyed that. But I do think throwing a roguelite element into this game does help give it some extra replay value. I mean, Metroidvania games have a decent amount already with all the exploration you can do, but adding a little something extra is never a bad thing. Now let's move on to the controls, and I like the controls. I think they worked very well. They were very responsive. They were good for dodging and attacking when I needed to. I was able to succeed in combat due to the controls. I didn't have a lot of issues with the platforming. I think that was well done. There is a good level of precision to it because we all know that in a Metroidvania game, if the precision to the controls sucks, well, the experience will generally suck. But let's move on to the graphics, and I mentioned chiptune music, so you might guess, and if you've seen anything from this, it is a pixel art style, but it's a much finer pixel art style. There are more pixels in each character than in some games, and it gives you a greater level of detail, but not just in the characters, but the world as a whole. And while I'm not always the biggest fan of pixel art, I do think that the amount of pixels they use to create the amount of detail that there is in the game is really cool. I appreciated it. I felt like the character designs did really fit with young Spartans and the world around them, as well as the creature and enemy designs. This being a God of War game, it would be kind of weird if there weren't like mythical creatures. And it being a Metroidvania game, it would also be really weird if the map wasn't made up of a bunch of different biomes. You got your swamp, you got like a sewer, you've got a winery, you've got mountains, you've got a variety, and they all do look and feel different. And the enemies in each zone will look and feel different. They might be similar style of enemies, but they'll have their own design. You'll run into this type of enemy in this area and vice versa. I also like the effects in the game when it comes to your weapons, your special attacks, the enemies' special attacks, and the animations. For a pixel art game, it's really well animated and there is a lot of depth to it. Generally speaking, I enjoyed that. Unfortunately, there are things that I did not enjoy. There were some weird glitches where the game either froze on me or froze my character in a weird way and I would have to restart. And the first time I had to do that, I knew I had lost a bit, but it did this audio glitch from a clip like 12 hours ago. I'm not even joking, it was at least 10 hours back in gameplay, and I was terrified that I'd lost that amount of data. I didn't, but it was concerning. And then I also ran into multiple crashes, which was extremely frustrating. All of those things combined taught me to save every opportunity that I could. There really isn't much of a checkpointing system. The game will checkpoint before a boss and before certain fights, but otherwise, if you die just while exploring, you could be fucked. Now, I mentioned that weird audio glitch that freaked me out. It's not the only strange glitch that I ran into with audio, as I had mentioned. So there are some weird things. There is some cleanup left in this game. And with that, let's get into the wrap up. And the first thing I'm going to say is overall, I did enjoy the experience. The glitches were very frustrating. Some of those things happening did kind of start pissing me off a bit. But overall, I would say I enjoyed the experience. Now, the game does cost $30, and I can't say that I'm necessarily unhappy with that price tag, but I will say there were quite a few glitches that, did drag my experience down as a whole. But not so far that I couldn't also recommend it. I just think be prepared for those things. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, what's your favorite prequel that just takes it way back to like the very early years of a character? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.